Welcome back. And what does the modern user expect? In this talk, we are going to explore the development of a new public-facing Shiny application that visualizes long-term state and territorial public health survey data. Get inspired by Lindsay Jorgensen, Director of Business Intelligence at Association of State and Territorial Health Officials, and John Connor, our Go JavaScript consultant with more than 10 years working experience in the realm of data analytics, both in the Asia and in the Europe. Lindsay, John, it's your time to shine.
Great. Well, hello, everyone. I'm Lindsay, and then here with John. So I will jump right into the background. So this talk is about tailoring Shiny for modern users. So I'll spend a good amount of time talking about process. But first, to give you all a little background about the ASTO, first ASTO, public health in the US, and then the profile. So ASTO is the Association for State and Territorial Health Officials. So we support essentially the person who runs state public health agencies and territorial public health agencies in the US. And so every 3 years, we conduct a census of those agencies, and it captures infrastructural data on public health in the US. So why is this useful? Well, it helps individuals at state health agencies advocate for funding, onboard new leadership, which often new state health officials don't necessarily have a background in public health, so this world might be new to them. It also is the only source that allows for tracking trends of infrastructure data in public health over time. And then agencies use it for needs assessments and strategic planning, and then also for benchmarking, which is really important to help them compare what they're doing to other agencies that are like them. So before I jump into the app we developed, I am showing you the what currently existed. So this is just a video to show when I started at ASTO and was tasked with updating the profile dashboard. At that time, we had a Tableau dashboard, and so this is what's running. There were a lot of, let's just say, not modern characteristics about this dashboard. As you can see, a lot of the clicks didn't really do anything. A lot of the visualizations weren't necessarily meaningful. It lacked a lot of compliance in terms of accessibility, and also the colors didn't match the colors of ASTO. So we wanted to build upon this, having a love for R and Shiny. I knew that I wanted to do something in Shiny, and so had the okay to go ahead and replace this Tableau with a Shiny dashboard. So let's talk about modern users. I love this comic. So when I talk about modern users, I'm not talking about Gen Z. So tailoring to a modern user doesn't mean you need to use slang like lit and riz, which I don't know what riz means, but it must be cool. You don't need to do collabs with influencers or get on TikTok. So I want to talk about what a modern user actually is. And really, I'll say our process was talking to the people who'd be using the application before we built it. So we did a series of about 15 focus groups, and that was what helped us identify what a modern user was. So we developed guiding principles from those conversations. And this is what we wanted to avoid. So we didn't want to have tons and tons of inputs on the dashboard. We didn't want tons of figures. We didn't want tons of colors and just a lot of distraction, what we would consider cognitive overload. So what we wanted was something that would be simple and clean. We wanted to minimize visual clutter, offer interpretation. This really came up a lot in the focus groups that we did, where people wanted to know like key points and kind of stories around the data that they were looking at. We didn't want to have tons of charts on every view and every tab, so we tried to minimize to only 2 per tab. And we also wanted to make it fun and interesting through use of icons and other features, and then hide a lot of the text as much as we could to reduce that cognitive overload. And then obviously there was a talk yesterday on accessibility that was fantastic, but we wanted to make sure that we could take some steps to address accessibility. And so I'll start there just to provide some tools for you. So this was the color palette that we picked. A part of that was we used Adobe Color to identify what this color palette would look like for individuals with different forms of color blindness. And so in Adobe Color, we found that our color palette was safe for individuals with different forms of color blindness. And that was an important part to at least, hit one of those main pieces of accessibility. We also use a tool called the Color Contrast Analyzer, which is a really quick and easy tool to test text and how they look against different backgrounds. So we were able to do this to identify what text would be okay to use against what background. And then I want to now move into the profile dashboard and give you all a demo. So here it is. I will say really one more quick point on accessibility is that we haven't finished our what we're planning to do with accessibility and still have quite a ways to go. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. So here is our Shiny application. And again, this one is public facing, so it really operates as a dashboard. We have key findings here, and this is set up essentially as an accordion through the BS UTILS package, and then with cards that rotate through. Again, this was a point that a lot of our partners wanted to see in our dashboard, was these key points that would be easy to access. We also have information on how to use the dashboard hidden in accordions that you can access past surveys, methods, and other kind of information here. And then we just have more information, a quote, things to make it look nice, essentially. So to get into this page, what we did during user testing, we found that not all people realized you could click these icons and then it would take you to a different tab in the dashboard. So we had that pop up. We used the sysaround package and structured it so that when a user visited a page with multiple tabs in it, that pop-up would happen, but it would only happen the first time they visited a page with multiple tabs. And so we have that just to make sure everyone who visits knows that they can click these to find more data or different views of the data. We also hit some information in pop-ups, and then in these drop-downs that are action links using the Shiny.js package that allows for the content to be hidden and then opened with a toggle. And then what we did is we tried to maintain some consistency throughout our pages so that the middle always shows the main figure. We use the highcharter package throughout the entire dashboard, and we did that for several reasons. One is that highcharter has amazing accessibility features, such as sonification and other pattern fills. We haven't fully implemented all we plan to with that, but they're really great. It's a really great package that essentially takes the highcharts JavaScript package and then wraps it into R. And so you can see that here. And then we always have data notes. Our data are quite nuanced, and so we have those throughout on the bottom. And then over here on this side, we include interpretation or links to data stories, which is a feature I'll talk about in a little while. And when we have more than one kind of story or piece of interpretation, we use the carousel to allow toggling through that. So I'm going to show just another page where you can see kind of the same consistency, where we have the left side panel with the inputs. And I will say we really tried to minimize to 3 at most inputs. There are cases where we have a fourth one that can drop down based on a different selection, but otherwise we always tried to minimize that. And then going back to the highcharter package, there are some really interesting graphics that in our case were really helpful. So this is a Sankey diagram because these aren't, often viewed by users. We did offer interpretation for graphics that might not be the ones they see every day in data visualizations. And then here's a bubble chart also where our data are very much influenced by how an agency is governed. And so we were able to show some trends in that way through these bubble graphs. So then I want to talk a little bit about the data stories. Well, actually, I'll talk about that more in a minute, but I just want to show you that we included data stories so that we could keep our dashboard nimble and always be able to update it and not have it just be published one time and done. And again, I'll get to that in just a moment. But another feature is agency profile pages. So someone from a state can come in, say they're from Connecticut, they can come in and look at this page to get the information that pertains to their state alone. We're currently working on printables of these, but we have different graphics that you can scroll down and look at those. And then at the bottom here, we have this is actually a data table that incorporates Font Awesome and allows kind of a quick, easy view of for agencies to look at what activities they're doing. And then a feature that we incorporated that I just love, and John will talk a little bit about this, is it's a lookup tool. So I'll save this a little bit for John, but so
no, go ahead.
Okay. So basically, this tool allows agencies to come in and they can find other agencies that are like them. So say there's an agency in the Midwest region and they want to find agencies in their same region, but that have a specific population size. So they can come in here, use a combination of any filters, and then those agencies will populate on the screen. One of the future iterations that we want in this dashboard is to have a button where they can save these states to use later in comparison. So going back to the finance, we have one of these pages where someone can come in, look at their agency, and then select a comparison. We have these kind of pre-developed comparison groups, but one of our future iterations will be allowing them to then compare based on the group that they select in this agency lookup tool. And this widget, I guess, was created by John, and so that's what he'll talk a little bit about. And then we have other things here. You can click and see. There was someone who specifically wanted not just to see the states on the map, but to actually have a list of them. So that's why we created this. And then this pie chart to show how many met the criteria that were selected. And then when you click out, it goes back to the image that explains how to use this feature. And we have it in two ways that work slightly different, but they essentially use the same tool to do that. So now I'll talk a little bit about the data stories. I will play a demo here. So what we did in the data stories is we use these different cards, and these cards all have content. And when you click the card, the way that this is structured is that all of the content for the data stories are stored in the application as a list. So this content is all technically a list. And when the card is selected, it then displays a full page of the content that's within that item in the list. And when nothing is selected, then that's when it displays the card. We've played around with different ways to kind of structure these data stories. So this one includes scrollytel, where you can, scroll through and see the different figures pop up. But yeah, so what I did here is on this page, so I created a GitHub repository to show the code behind the data stories structure. So I think that there's a link to the slides, and you can go in that. You can click to look at the code, and then to look at, I'll just go here, the basic application. It just shows essentially how we created this content, and provides the code so people can replicate that if they're interested. And now I'll hand it over to John.
Thank you. Yeah, another feature that I think we both liked is how we handled the mobile responsiveness. If that's a word. The idea is that as you've seen, we have three main columns on the dashboard. You have the inputs on the left, the main visualization in the center, and context on the right. But if you use the typical Bootstrap grid, you know how that would kind of collapse on itself if you have a mobile view or a tablet. So the idea was to collapse these in what's called off-canvas things that you can bring up with a click, like is being shown there, and then move the little tab icons to the center top of the page up there. I think we're pretty happy with this. It seems to work well. It was a bit tricky in Shiny again, but I think we managed. And then the other thing is the bit on the filtering that Lindsay demoed a bit before. But the idea of Asda was working with quite a large data set, at least in terms of columns, and we want to make sure that people can access all of these and be able to apply filter. So we tinkered a bit with different solutions to try things out there. We couldn't find something that quite met the need, that made something quite clean, and that's what we came up with. So you can dynamically add your filters essentially based on whatever data is available in the original data frame that's being shared.
So I will talk a little bit about next steps. We worked on a quite tight timeline to develop the dashboard and then get it public. And so we are still working on some things kind of behind the scenes. So one of the features we want to add is a toggle to overlay the bars and maps with a pattern to enhance accessibility and for black and white printing. I didn't mention this, but with highcharter, all of the figures in the dashboard are downloadable. Let me just show you that really quickly. So if I go to governance here, all of these are downloadable in either a vector or a raster image. And so let me go back here. So there is ease of printing for folks. So we want to make the printing that might happen in black and white easier to read. And so also we are working on accessibility for ADA compliance, and that will involve full integration of some of the features that highcharter has, which I'll talk about in just a second. As John mentioned, we designed the UI for mobile friendliness, but there are still some tweaks that we need to do on certain pages that don't necessarily follow the sidebar, middle, and then other column. And then I mentioned this next point. And then on the data stories, we are continually adding data stories, and that's kind of a way for us as an organization to keep people coming back to the dashboard. And then lastly, I'll just say right now, this is a private, it's private on GitHub, and we are really hoping to move towards making it open source. And so there are several things we need to do prior to that. One is we haven't publicly released the data for the profile yet. And then we want to really make some more strides in accessibility, but we are planning to, if not making the full application on open source, making various parts of it, hopefully the full application. So I know I've greatly benefited from open source. And then, this is the developed by my colleague Maddox Marshall, who's amazing and has a lot of knowledge in accessibility with Shiny and other data visualization. So this is what we put this in. We're building another application right now for partner organization, and this is a part of the scoping that we've done. But this is essentially what it would look like to add that pattern fill. So some helpful links. I won't go through these, but it's just some of the things I've mentioned. There's links here. And then Mara Averick has a really great blog with a 5-part series on accessibility using the highcharter package. And so I've linked to that. And that also talks a little bit about like the sonification and other features that are available. And then I've linked the code to the presentation, the stories demo, and the app. And then the last thing I want to say is that during the process of development, I have like an entire notebook of just like drawing out ideas of what the dashboard could look like. Slowly, this character came to greatly comfort me in my moments of distress. So I thought I would share him with you all for the sake of anyone who's experienced anxiety or confusion or a need for problem solving in the development of your Shiny applications. So that's all we have for you today, and we can take any questions.
Thank you so much, Lindsay and John. I really love how it looks. I'm a millennial. So lovely to see it. We have so many questions in our chat that we are not able to answer all of them. So maybe please answer them in the chat, Lindsay, John, after the talk. And I will just ask one thing. How many user feedback sessions did you conducted, and do you have one or two tips for anyone that wants to do it as well?
Yeah, so for the user testing specifically, is that what the question is?
Yes.
So we did around 10 to 15 focus groups first, and that was just to I have a background in qualitative research, and so that was to identify like important themes before building. And then I think I saw a question about the UX UI. The answer to that is no. We did that in-house. I never knew my ceramics degree would come handy until I was doing prototyping for things. And then on the back end, after it was developed, we did like 4 user testing sessions. I wish we could have done a few more, but time was like of the essence. And so those were helpful, and that's where we learned that the icons were challenging for some people. We made some changes after that, and the data stories layout changed. So the tips were we basically just had sessions with people where we watched them interact with the application, and we had some guided questions, and then kind of built on for the next user testing session. Like, is this confusing for you too? So yeah, that was basically what we did there.
Thank you so much. Once again, great app, inspiring story. Thank you for sharing. It's amazing. We have some more questions in the chat, so if you find a minute to answer them all, they're all great ones. Thank you guys for engaging, and thank you for your presentation.
Thanks so much.